these conditions because these states legalize it. I'm a physician, and I can vouch for the fact that some very sick people benefit from marijuana. Sick people that have AIDS and cancer can use marijuana and benefit by it, and then compassionate conservatives come along and they arrest them under federal law. They overrule state law, and they put sick people in prison for this. It makes no sense, and I don't know why we should be such strong supporters of Roosevelt's position to go ahead and tax and then eventually lead to making it illegal. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I believe in a free society and making freedom of choice.
All right, let me let Congressman Nistick go ahead.
Sure. Well, you know, this is no time to surrender. In the last 8 years, our efforts to enforce and educate people have brought down the teenage use of marijuana by 25%. That's a significant reduction. That hasn't been mentioned before, but it should be. When you're talking about so-called medical marijuana, the substance, THC, is actually already available in prescription form. It's a prescription drug called Marinol. It's used to treat the very things. There is no medication that is used by smoking. In fact, marijuana smoke has 4 times the tar of tobacco smoke. It has some 400 harmful substances in it. So, you know, don't tell me you need marijuana for medical purposes. And don't tell me that the cost is measured by only the cost of drug enforcement. Look at the broken homes, look at the lost jobs, look at the consequences of drug legalization generally. Now, Ron has not mentioned, but he said before, he doesn't just want to legalize marijuana, he wants to legalize drugs, period, which makes it all the more possible for marijuana to be a gateway drug to harder drugs like cocaine, opium, heroin, and so forth. All right.
I'm going to let you respond to that, Congressman Paul, but I want to, with both of you, just bring the question back to the issue of violence on the border, because it's where our focus is right now, given what's happening in Mexico. And Congressman Paul, you're from Texas. You're right there on the Mexican border in your district. If marijuana were to be legalized, what would change?
Well, the first thing is I don't think just legalizing marijuana would do the trick. I think we have to have a different attitude. I think Ernie just doesn't have a whole lot of respect for the Constitution, because prior to 1937,
none of these Supreme Court's ruled on this issue already, and your side lost.
Congressman, if you could just go back to the question I asked, which was about the violence on the border, given where you live.
Yes, I
really think it's for how life would change.
I think the border wars going on right now is related to drugs, just as the wars went on in Chicago and other cities when Al Capone controlled everything. So you want the killings. There were a lot of killings back with Prohibition. I mean, if people want to really, you know, stop some violence and bad drugs and stop cigarettes and stop alcohol, but we don't do that.
It's not just drugs.
But what we do is we
combined in this problem.
It is, but
Ron, I used to handle the funding for the Customs Service. The same people that run the drugs and the guns are also running the illegal immigrants. They're smugglers, pure and simple. And all of these things about border enforcement and enforcement against illegal immigration,
did you have any of that?
Drugs all go together.
Did you have any of that before the war on drugs? No. How do you think the Taliban? How do you think the Taliban exists?
Ron, let's not surrender. Let's not surrender and subject. Do we need new intoxicants in our society?
Why do you surrender to the don't want to obey the Constitution? If you want regulation,
the Supreme Court ruled 5 years ago that the federal law supersedes any state law on marijuana.
Yeah, well, that is the case, but that's not the way the Constitution. Now, you know, I just don't think there's any benefit to just trying to talk over somebody. If somebody wants to ask me a question, I'll answer it, but I'm not going to try to fuss and outshout somebody.
Ron, neither one of us hopefully should do that.
No, let me just, because I want to get your take on this. One thing, Congressman Nistick, you heard Tom Foreman a moment ago.
Right.
He sort of addressed this, and we have a separate issue here. The Bush administration, you know, basically they had the zero tolerance policy on marijuana, including medical marijuana. They did raids, they did prosecutions. But the Obama administration has recently announced they're not going to do that, not follow that same policy. Where do you stand on this? Do you think that's a mistake?
It's a huge mistake, because you're sending a mixed message. If you say, if Barack Obama wants to have it both ways, and he's not the only politician that does this, I respect Ron Paul's attitude that he clearly says he wants to legalize these drugs. At least he's giving a clear message. Barack Obama, on the one hand, says don't legalize it, but on the other hand, I'm not going to enforce the law. The Supreme Court ruled, it was in the right decision 4 or 5 years ago, that state medical marijuana laws are subject to the federal law that says you cannot have medical marijuana. So we've had a clear ruling, but now the whole waters are being muddied. It's the mixed messages that causes problems in trying to enforce the drug laws and lead to the violations that we're seeing.
All right, gentlemen, I wish we had more time. I know there's so much to talk about on this front. I really appreciate both of you coming on. Congressman Paul, Congressman Nistup, thank you for your time tonight.